So, hi everyone, good morning. So, today is 29th of June 2026, and now is the time to start with today's session of or today's analysis of the Hindu. Right. So, the most important news that we will be covering in today's analysis is basically that the Indian Prime Minister is visiting Seychelles. Seychelles visit हो रही है, official visit है. He's not to, he's basically visiting Seychelles and we will see and he has been also conferred with the highest civilian honor of Seychelles, right? So we will discuss all those things, and he is there to participate in the National Day of Seychelles. So and he's prime minister of our country would be in Seychelles from 27th to 29th of June. मतलब आज वापस आ जाएंगे prime minister, right? So let's start with today's session now. So Indian Ocean as a shared responsibility said by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So before going into the details of this particular uh, article, let's talk about few important facts about Seychelles, right? So let's talk one by one कि क्या capital है, क्या currency है, ये सारी चीजें पहले हम discuss कर लेते हैं, फिर उसके बाद हम next point पे move कर सकते हैं, right? So moving on. Hi everyone. Seychelles, right? Capital is Victoria. Next important point, currency. What is the currency? So Seychelles rupees is the currency of Seychelles, and it is denoted with the abbreviation SCR. It is denoted with the abbreviation SCR. Now moving on to the next point. So basically, the Prime Minister of India is also conferred with the highest civilian honor of Seychelles, which is Guardian of the Blue Horizon. Guardian of the Blue Horizon, highest civilian honor of Seychelles, conferred upon the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Right, so this is the second important point related to this particular topic, which you should keep in your mind. Now, moving on to the next point. I guess it's a bit blurry, so let me clear it. Yeah, it's fine now, I guess. So, moving on to the next point, that what are the important things that have taken place during this particular time? So, Indian Prime Minister is in Seychelles from 27th to 29th of June 2026. 50th National Day celebration of Seychelles, right? 50th National Day or Golden Jubilee celebration of Seychelles. Now moving to the next point, moving on to the next point. So the next important point related to this particular news item that we should keep in our mind कि अभी जो development, recent development है, it's more about securing or having a strong maritime cooperation. This is the most important objective of this particular visit, the strengthening of maritime cooperation between these two countries. Keep on making, important headlines, keep on jotting down important points related to this particular news, right? So now when we talk about the National Day celebration of Seychelles, it takes place on 29th of June every year. इस बार गोल्डन जुबली सेलिब्रेशन था, 50 इयर्स कंप्लीट हो चुके हैं, तो उस पर्टिकुलर रीजन की वजह से भी इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. एंड इंडिया हैज बीन इन्वेस्टिंग अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम एंड एफर्ट इन इंश्योरिंग a very smooth situation in Indian Ocean, and Seychelles is basically in Indian Ocean. So from that particular aspect, Seychelles is a very important partner for India. Now moving on to the next point. Now the Indian diaspora is also very important when we talk about Seychelles, because in Seychelles the entire population has basically 5% Indians. So that is also a very strong demographic bond between the two countries, right? Almost 5% of the entire population. It has a total population of 120,000, 1,20,000 people रहते हैं Seychelles में, और उसमें से almost 6,000 के आसपास में person of Indian origin है, right? Now moving on to the next point. So Seychelles got independence on 29th of June 1976, right? It got independence on 29th of June 1976, and our bilateral relations were also established in 1976. Soon after Seychelles became an independent nation, we established our bilateral ties with uh, Seychelles. Now, moving on to the next point. अब इसके अलावा अब आपको ये सब याद रखने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि 2022 में महात्मा गांधी का स्टैचू अनवील किया गया था इन Seychelles. Those points are not relevant for your understanding at this point of time. Now moving on to the next point. And India has been a long standing trading partner of Seychelles. हम बहुत सारा फाइनेंशियल एड भी प्रोवाइड करते रहते हैं, और हमने एक स्पेशल इकोनॉमिक पैकेज भी अनाउंस किया था रिसेंटली 2026 में $175 million के आसपास का. So from that particular perspective also, this is actually important for our country, right? And Mr. Modi has been conferred with the highest civilian honor of Seychelles, which is Garden of the Blue Horizon, right? So it is a very small island in Indian Ocean, जहाँ पर अभी प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी 3 day विजिट पर हैं. क्लाइमेट इम्पैक्ट, AI, ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर तो क्वाइट ऑब्वियस कि हम किसी भी कंट्री में विजिट करते हैं तो इस पर बात होती है. नाउ दिस इज समथिंग विच हैज़ बीन outrightly rejected by the Indian government, because recently there was a terrorist attack in Karachi, and the Pakistani authorities said that there is some sort of involvement of Indian government in this attack, and India has outrightly denied all these baseless allegations and has said that all these reports related to the involvement of Indian authorities in that particular attack are actually baseless, and we categorically reject them, right? So अभी पाकिस्तान का ये कहीं ना कहीं से अटेंशन हमेशा चाहिए होता है. तो अभी रिसेंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कहाँ से अटेंशन चाहिए उनको? रिसेंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट में उनको अटेंशन चाहिए कि भाई आप हमारे कंट्री में जो भी अटैक हो रहे हैं उस पर आप इन्वॉल्व हैं. और दूसरा भी कुछ टाइम पहले जब along side the Durand line, when Afghanistan, there was a conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So at that time also students Pakistan said that India is actually providing a lot of support to Afghanistan so that they can attack our country. So all these are basically ridiculous and baseless allegations, and we don't have to pay any sort of heed to these particular allegations. Now moving on to the next point. So we have outrightly and categorically rejected these baseless allegations. तो इसमें अभी इतना कुछ डिस्कस करने के लिए है नहीं. Now the Director General of Shipping, DGS stands by lifting of curbs on Indian shippers. So basically अभी क्या है, अभी इसका पूरा context समझ लेते हैं. First let's understand the context of this particular news, that why we are discussing it, right? Why is very important. So why we are discussing it? So we know on 21st of June 2026, a historic peace deal was signed. A historic memorandum of understanding was signed between Iran and United States of America. And this particular memorandum of understanding was to be in place for 60 days. और इन 60 days के टाइम में ये था कि ईरान और अमेरिका एक दूसरे पर अटैक नहीं करेंगे. And after that what happened, that there was an attack by IRGC on a ship which was पासिंग थ्रू स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज. उसके बाद रिटेलिएटरी अटैक अभी दोनों कंट्रीज ने स्टार्ट कर दिए वापस से एक दूसरे के ऊपर. सो इन बिटवीन व्हाट हैपेंड, दैट इंटरनेशनल मैरीटाइम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, व्हिच इज अ डेडिकेटेड स्पेशलाइज्ड एजेंसी ऑफ द यूएन, क्रिएटेड इन 1948, it started an evacuation mission. और उस evacuation mission का मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या था? evacuation मिशन का मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव ये था कि जितने भी स्ट्रैंडेड सी फेरर्स हैं इन द पर्शियन गल्फ, दोज स्ट्रैंडेड सी फेरर्स वाज टू बी इवैक्यूएटेड बिकॉज दे वर देयर since the beginning of this war, since 28th of February 2026. So they are there for a very long period of time. So being a specialized agency of the UN, it was the primary responsibility of International Maritime Organization. But जब ये अटैक हुए तो इंटरनेशनल मैरीटाइम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने जो पूरा का पूरा इवैक्यूएशन मिशन था उसको क्या किया? रोक दिया वहीं पे. Then and there the particular mission was stopped. Now after that particular decision was taken by the International Maritime Organization, the Directorate General of Shipping, उन्होंने अपना जो स्टैंड है वो उन्होंने बोला कि वो वैसे का वैसे ही रहेगा, एंड इंडिया हैज क्लैरिफाइड इट इज इट्स you know stance that what is going to be the approach of the Indian authorities, and they have said that despite these attacks are taking place, we will try to evacuate and commercial shipping will be restored just like that, right? Kerala minister support for no, this is actually again it's just a political news. Abhi bahut zyada now this is center seeks to ease licensing process for medical devices, so just to ensure the manufacturing and licensing of medical device across different risk categories is smooth, right? अभी क्या होता है कि अगर आपको medical equipments अगर आपको manufacture करने हैं या अगर आपको import करने हैं, so it takes a lot of time. So finally the government had said that it will reduce the timelines for the manufacturing license for medical devices. जो medical device इंडिया में manufacture होते थे, जो भी companies involved थी, they used to wait for a very long period of time to get a manufacturing license from the government of India. But the government of India had said it absolutely clearly that we will modify or we will amend the rules of 2017 and we will shorten the time span जिसमें medical license या manufacturing license grant किया जाता था इन companies को, right? And it will ensure कि जो different risk categories में equipments involved होते हैं उनका जो supply chain है that can be maintained absolutely in an absolute comprehensive manner. Now, Ram Temple graft case concerns assets of a juristic person. Right, so now this is actually very important. Who is a juristic person? My question is very simple. Who is a juristic person? Who is a juristic person? Whether God is a juristic person? This is the first question, or the second one is, or whether the religious deity or deity is a juristic person. So these are two important questions that we have to discuss with reference to Ram Temple graft case or Ram Temple theft case, right? These are the two important questions that we have to discuss. That what is this idea of a juristic person? So a day before yesterday or a few days back, we discussed about two, different notions, and these two different notions were basically natural person and a juristic person. So when we talk about a natural person, human beings are natural person, right? We live, we breathe, we die, right? We have certain rights which only, human beings have. We have certain fundamental rights, right? Whereas a juristic person is a kind of legal fiction. Now, what is legal fiction? So students, legal fiction is something which doesn't exist in, its original form, right? There is nothing called uh, or there is nothing like a juristic person, but it is a kind of a legal fiction which has been created by the authorities to make things very smooth, or to strengthen the operationalization of all these entities, legal entities. Now there is a difference. Legal entities क्या होती है कि अब कोई company है. Now company in its original form is not a person, but it is considered as a juristic person. And why it is considered as a juristic person? So that certain rights, like right to sue or to get or to be sued, can be bestowed upon that particular entity. So this is the idea of juristic person, right? कि हर एक चीज के ऑपरेशनलाइजेशन को स्मूथ करने के लिए हम एक लीगल फिक्शन क्रिएट करते हैं, हम एक ऐसी अथॉरिटी क्रिएट करते हैं जो पर से वो पर्सन नहीं होती है, बट हम उसे लीगल पर्सन कंसीडर करते हैं, सो दैट जो लॉ इन्फोर्समेंट मैकेनिज्म है इट कैन बी इम्प्लीमेंटेड इफेक्टिवली, right? So now the next important question with reference to the Ram temple graft cases, that whether the idol of Shri Ram is a juristic person or not. So first, whether the deity is a juristic person, or the second question is whether God is a juristic person or not. So to answer this particular question, we had a very long, legal interpretation upon for these two questions, and we will discuss these questions in very detail because these questions are actually important. Now, courts through multiple judgments, different court through multiple judgments have clarified this particular position, and they have said God is not a juristic person. God is not a juristic person. JP stands for juristic person. Why? Because idea of God is very abstract. Idea of God is very abstract means it's not easy to quantify the idea of God. आप कुछ उससे specific नहीं कर सकते बहुत. It's a very abstract idea. The entire idea of God. But under Hindu law, now Hindu law has a very different position when it comes to the deities. So basically जो मंदिर के अंदर deities होती हैं, जिनको हम भगवान की मूर्तियां जो बोलते हैं बेसिकली, वो जुरिस्टिक पर्सन होते हैं. जुरिस्टिक पर्सन का मतलब क्या है कि दे हैव सर्टेन राइट्स. वो किसी को सू कर सकते हैं और उन्हें भी कोई सू कर सकता है, राइट? नाउ तो द इंस्टॉल्ड डेटीज जिनकी हम क्या कहते हैं प्राण प्रतिष्ठान करते हैं. इंस्टॉल्ड डेटीज मींस इंस्टॉल्ड डेटीज मींस इंस्टॉल्ड डेटीज मींस जिनकी प्राण प्रतिष्ठान होता है टेम्पल के अंदर में. उन डेटीज को हम क्या मानते हैं? उन डेटीज को हम लीगल पर्सन मानते हैं. मतलब अगर किस सपोज देयर इज अ टेम्पल, राइट, उसके अंदर कोई एक मूर्ति है तो वो लीगल पर्सन है. अगर वहां से कुछ चोरी होती है तो क्या वो लीगल पर्सन सू कर सकता है? एंड द आंसर इज एब्सोल्युटली yes. Answer is absolutely yes, right. But at the same time, you have to understand one more thing, that every deity is not a juristic person. हर एक डीटी, हर एक मूर्ति जो होती है वो जुरिस्टिक पर्सन नहीं होती है. ओनली दोज डीटीज आर जुरिस्टिक पर्सन जिनका प्राण प्रतिष्ठान होता है, राइट? जिनकी क्या होती है? कॉन्सिक्रेशन सेरेमनी होती है, राइट? कॉन्सिक्रेशन बोलते हैं. कॉन्सिक्रेशन सेरेमनी इज वेरी एसेंशियल फॉर बीइंग कॉल्ड अ जुरिस्टिक पर्सन. नाउ मूविंग ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट. And through multiple judgments, this particular position has been made absolutely clear by by the Supreme Court of India, or through different judgments of the High Court, that juristic person, that basically these religious deities are juristic person under Hindu law. Right, now moving on to the next point. So when we talk about this entire issue, idea related to juristic person, it dates back to 1880. And what happened in 1887, students? So the Bombay High Court, pronounced a very popular verdict in the case of Dakor Temple case. It was Dakor Temple case. ये पहला लीगल ट्रेस अवेलेबल है related to the juristic person, Dakor Temple case. Now students, what happened in Dakor Temple case? So what happened that in this Dakor Temple case, the British authorities claimed that Hindu idols are basically Hindu or these deities within the temple premises are a juristic person, and वो जो juristic person होते हैं उनको जो मैनेज करने के लिए, उनको जो एडमिनिस्टर तो हम नहीं बोल सकते, उनके पूरे जो सारे जो डे टू डे अफेयर्स होते हैं उनको रेगुलेट करने के लिए जो लोग होते हैं, उनको उनको ओवर उनको लुक आफ्टर करने के लिए जो लोग होते हैं, दोज पीपल आर कॉल्ड एज ट्रस्टी, राइट? सो एंड हु इज अ ट्रस्टी? जिसमें कुछ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज हम बेस्टो करते हैं सम रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज, सो दैट दे कैन परफॉर्म देयर फंक्शंस इफेक्टिवली, राइट? सो हम उनको बोलते हैं ट्रस्टीज. तो जो रिलीजियस डाइटीज होती हैं, जो जुरिस्टिक पर्सन होता है, उनको उनके जो डे टू डे अफेयर्स होते हैं उनको लुक आफ्टर करने के लिए वी हैव द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ ट्रस्टीज, राइट? सो एंड इन दिस पर्टिकुलर केस द बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट मेड इट एब्सोल्युटली क्लियर दैट हिंदू deities are juristic Hindu deities are juristic person, right? And Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, in a very famous case of uh, Sabrimala judgment, uh, and this particular statement was very important, that Mr. Chandrachud said while delivering this Sabrimala verdict, that we understand that there are certain rights which are conferred upon these religious deities, but it doesn't mean that they have all the constitutional right. Just because they have certain legal right, it doesn't mean that they have all the important constitutional rights. So that's the basic difference between a legal person and a natural person. There are these constitutional rights, most of the constitutional rights are available to the natural person, but these rights are not available to the religious deities, right? So this particular thing, the idea of juristic person, has been discussed in this particular case, and it is also important with reference to the current uh, you know uh, embezzlement of assets at Ram Temple. So let's start with the with a bare reading of this article. The Ram Temple embezzlement case raises serious allegations of misappropriation of cash and valuable donated by devotees as an expression of piety to a Hindu deity, uniquely considered a juristic person who is a minor in law. Now, what is expression of piety? Piety. Anyone would like to answer the question? Piety. So piety, or expression of piety, means showing deep sense of respect for some religious figure, right? Showing deep sense of respect for religious figures. तो जो भी टेम्पल को या रिलीजियस डिटीज को डोनेट किया जाता है, इट इज अ काइंड ऑफ, और इट इज अ फॉर्म ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन फ्रॉम द डिवोटी. इट इज अ काइंड ऑफ मोड ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन कि हम बहुत रिस्पेक्टफुल हैं आपके टुवर्ड्स, राइट? सो इट इज कॉल्ड एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ पीटी, पाइटी. सो डोनेटिंग कैश, गोल्ड और एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ असेट to a religious deity is a specific or is an expression of respect, right? And uniquely considered a juristic person who is a minor in law. So जो religious deities होती हैं, they have been given a status of minor. तो minor के जो भी assets होते हैं उनको एडमिनिस्टर किया जाता है उनके लीगल गार्डियन के थ्रू. तो यहाँ पे लीगल गार्डियन की तरह कौन एक्ट करता है? ट्रस्टीज और द अथॉरिटीज ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर ट्रस्ट, राइट? Series of judicial decisions right from the days of the Privy Council to Supreme Court judgments in the Sri Padmanabh Swami Temple and Ram Janmabhoomi Temple cases hold the deity as a legal entity capable of holding property. द पद्मनाभ स्वामी, सो बेसिकली दे कैन होल्ड द प्रॉपर्टी, बट वो प्रॉपर्टी को पूरा मैनेज करने का काम किसका होता है? ट्रस्टी का होता है. द पद्मनाभ स्वामी टेम्पल केस सॉ द सुप्रीम कोर्ट होल्ड दैट डोनेशंस गिवन बाय वर्शिपर्स बिलोंग स्ट्रिक्टली टू द डीटी बाय डिटेलिंग महाराजा मारथंड वर्मा's act of dedication. So basically prior example was given by the Supreme Court of India. The importance of the act of donating to deity as an expression of Hindu piety was discussed by Privy Council in Vidya Varuthi Tirtha Samigal versus. So this is a case of 1921 where it was discussed Hindu piety finds expression in gifts to idols and images consecrated and installed in temples, right? So what is the most important thing कि जो consecrated deities होती हैं, जो ये expression of piety होता है, सिर्फ उन्हीं के towards show किया जा सकता है, right? Because जो consecrated deities होती हैं सिर्फ उन्हीं को juristic person माना है कोर्ट ने through various judgments, right? So it is also it is quite obvious to understand it. It is very important, right? That कि जब तक आप उस पर्टिकुलर टेम्पल में कॉन्सिक्रेशन सेरेमनी नहीं हुई, प्राण प्रतिष्ठान नहीं हुआ, देन इट इज नॉट अ जुरिस्टिक पर्सन. और अगर जुरिस्टिक पर्सन नहीं है तो फिर वो वहां पे डिवोशन और एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ पाइटी का भी इशू नहीं आएगा, राइट? सो मूविंग ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, इट नोटेड दैट दीज गिफ्ट्स और डोनेशंस बाय डिवोटीज वर made to the deities eo nomine in the name of deity itself, providing proof that a deity was a juristic entity vested with the capacity of receiving gifts and holding property. The courts have, however, recognized that a dedicated property vests in the idol only in an ideal sense. The physical possession and management of that property must be taken over by a human agency. नॉर्मल केसेस में ट्रस्टी बोलते हैं हम इस ह्यूमन एजेंसी को. जो भी प्रॉपर्टी, गिफ्ट, असेट्स आप डोनेट करते हैं, दीज असेट्स आर टू बी रेगुलेटेड एंड मैनेज्ड बाय अ ह्यूमन एजेंसी, एंड इन मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस दिस ह्यूमन एजेंसी इज नोन एज trustee, right? But this person or group of individuals have the status of mere manager. The ownership of a dedicated property vests entirely with the deity, right? So the next important features is that basically they are kind of managers of that property that has been donated to the temple. वो उस पर अपना right कभी claim नहीं कर सकते क्यों? Because they are basically there to they are basically caretaker of those assets. So the caretaker of the assets cannot claim cannot claim the power to hold those assets. You just manage those assets while you are holding that particular office, and once your term is over, you have no possession or no control over the ownership of those particular assets, because the ownership at the end of the day, students, ownership still lies with the juristic person who is a religious deity which is consecrated within the temple premise, right? Now moving on to the next point. The Supreme Court in Bishwanath and others versus Sri Thakur Radha Ballabji had declared a deity to be in the legal position of and requiring the protection afforded to a minor. An idol is in the position of a minor when a person representing it leaves it in the lurch. A person interested in the worship of the idol can certainly be clothed with an ad hoc power of representation to protect its interests, the court held in the 1967 judgment. Right. So now moving on to the next point. Now this is a very important observation made by the Supreme Court of India in 1967. So the Supreme Court made it absolutely clear that you know uh, the idea of religious deity exists there, the idea of legal person exists there, and this religious deity is considered as minor, right? And minor हमने वही बोला कि human agency के through वो अपना operate करते हैं. So this religious deity is considered as a minor, और उस रिलीजियस डाइटी की पूजा करने में जो भी इंटरेस्टेड स्टेक होल्डर हैं, लेट्स टेक वन एग्जांपल दैट आई हैव इमेंस फेथ इन लॉर्ड राम, लॉर्ड श्री राम, आई हैव इमेंस फेथ इन हिम, राइट? नाउ I got to know from somewhere that there were certain some sort of wrongdoings that are happening within the temple premise कि लोग चोरी कर ले रहे हैं डोनेशन बॉक्स से, असेट्स जो डोनेट हो रहे हैं या जो लोग असेट्स भगवान के चढ़ावे के तौर पे दे रहे हैं उसको लोग गायब कर दे रहे हैं, सोने की चेन, चांदी की ईंटें, ये सारी चीजें लोग गायब कर दे रहे हैं. तो आई हैव इमेंस फेथ इन लॉर्ड श्री राम, so I am the stakeholder. So if there is anything like that which is happening, a person interested in the worship of that particular idol can sue दैट पर्टिकुलर इंडिविजुअल. जो भी उस पर्टिकुलर केस में इन्वॉल्व है उसको वो क्या कर सकते हैं, सू कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज आई हैव दिस वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट, और आई हैव दिस वेस्टेड नॉट इंटरेस्ट, वेस्टेड राइट इन मी, बिकॉज आई हैव इमेंस फेथ इन लॉर्ड श्री राम. तो उस फेथ से जो मेरे मन में श्रद्धा है, जो मेरे मन में फेथ है लॉर्ड श्री राम के लिए, उस फेथ से मेरे पास ऑटोमेटिकली वो राइट आ जाता है कि मैं किसी भी कंसर्न इंडिविजुअल को सू कर सकता हूं कोर्ट में, राइट? सो और सू करने का मतलब क्या, दैट यू गेट द पावर ऑफ रिप्रेजेंटेशन, राइट? क्योंकि वो माइनर है, माइनर किसी गार्डियन के थ्रू ही कोर्ट में रिप्रेजेंट करता है अपने आप को. तो अगर जो भी इंटरेस्टेड ह्यूमन एजेंसी है वो अपने आप को उस पोजीशन में रखते हैं जहां पर वो फाइनली उस लीगल डीटी को या रिलीजियस डाइटी को कोर्ट में रिप्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं. सो द पावर ऑफ रिप्रेजेंटेशन कम्स फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर प्रिंसिपल, द desire or the not the desire, actually the expression of having faith or belief in that particular god, right? So this is entirely about that. Now moving on to the next point. अब इस केस में इशू तो बहुत बड़ा है ना, क्योंकि अब फॉर अ वेरी लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम it was in the manifesto of Bharatiya Janata Party to construct Ram Temple, right? Although it was dependent upon the judgment given by the Supreme Court of India, but it was there, right? So finally, if there is a case related to the theft, or theft happened within the temple premise कि लोगों ने वहाँ के assets जो थे उनको उनका embezzlement कर दिया, और लोगों की प्रॉपर्टी पिछले 3-4 साल में 100 टाइम्स इंक्रीज की है. जो अक्यूज्ड अरेस्ट हुए हैं उसमें से कुछ अक्यूज्ड ऐसे थे जिनकी प्रॉपर्टी 100 टाइम्स मल्टीप्लाई हुई है, जिनके असेट 100 times multiply हुए in last 3 to 4 years. So that was the level of corruption. So the actually the sword is hanging on the neck of the BJP government in this particular case, and also the individuals who were involved. Justice Narsimha to be the part of Supreme Court Collegium as Justice Maheshwari retired. So we know this that finally Justice Maheshwari has retired as the Supreme Court judge from the office of the Supreme Court judgeship. And now we know this कि जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोलेजियम होता है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोलेजियम के मेंबर्स कौन होते हैं? चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया प्लस 4 सीनियर most जजेस सीजीआई प्लस 4 सीनियर मोस्ट जजेस आर द पार्ट ऑफ द कोलेजियम। तो इसमें से जो 4 सीनियर मोस्ट जजेस थे, इसमें से अभी जस्टिस माहेश्वरी रिटायर कर चुके हैं, और जस्टिस माहेश्वरी को रिप्लेस कौन करेगा कोलेजियम में? जस्टिस नरसिम्हा। Right. Collegium is that body which which decides the appointment and the transfer of judges of the Constitutional Court, transfer and appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court of India. And there are currently 25 operational high courts in India, and there is only one Supreme Court which is in New Delhi. Right. So इनके जो constitutional courts होते हैं आर्टिकल 32 और 226 के अंदर जिनको establish किया गया, राइट, आर्टिकल 124 और 214 के अंदर जिनको establish किया गया, आर्टिकल 124 is for the Supreme Court of India and आर्टिकल 214 is for the High Courts of the state. उनके जो जजेस होते हैं उनका अपॉइंटमेंट एंड ट्रांसफर इज टेकन केयर बाय द कोलेजियम, एंड कोलेजियम comprises of Chief Justice of India plus 4 senior most judges. Right. Now moving on to the next point. Indian Army contingent to participate in Seychelles 50th National Day event. So we know this, that 32 personnel from the Assam regiment led by Captain RNH Deolkar will participate in the 50th National Day celebration of Seychelles on Monday. आज ये लोग participate करेंगे because we know this, that on 29th of June 1976 Seychelles got independence and it became an independent nation. Right. So it became an independent nation. So 50th नेशनल डे जो सेलिब्रेशन होगा आज सीचल्स में, उसमें कौन पार्टिसिपेट कर रहा है? आसाम रेजिमेंट विल पार्टिसिपेट लेड बाय कैप्टन RNH देओलकर. राइट. Now, an Indian Navy marching contingent accompanied by military band will take part in the ceremonial parade, reflecting the strong and enduring defense partnership between India and the Seychelles. Right. So, on the next page, we will see that how Prime Minister Narendra Modi had lauded India's efforts of being a self-reliant country, or self-reliant country when it comes to the production of defense equipment. Right. From seas to skies, India is becoming self-reliant in development of the defense equipments, or in the defense sector. We are becoming a self-reliant country. We are now from importing defense equipments from other countries to exporting defense equipment to other countries. Has been a long leap that India has taken forward. So this is one thing which is important. And in the second, now this is actually very important. Central Sanskrit University of in New Delhi, they have announced that they will start BTech and courses on artificial intelligence and data sciences, BTech in AI and the courses on data science जो संस्कृत लैंग्वेज में अब इंट्रोड्यूस होंगे. राइट. सो दिस इज ऑल्सो अ ग्रेट लीप फॉरवर्ड दैट BTech in artificial intelligence and data science would be taught in the Sanskrit language at the Central Sanskrit University. So again, that's a very relevant point. And now moving on to the next point. So when we talk about the production or the defense infrastructure of our country, there is one important objective that we have to understand. And I have told you this thing multiple times, that India's defense export target for 2029 is 50,000 crore rupees. By 2029, India wants to export defense equipments worth 50,000 crore every year, and we have we are investing a lot of money in that particular context. हम बहुत सारा पैसा इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं अभी डिफेंस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए. और लास्ट ईयर इन द फाइनेंशियल ईयर 2025-26 अभी तक का इंडिया का जो डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन था, दैट रीच टू एन all-time high of rupees 1.78 lakh crore. Right. So this is also this might be one relevant point, because defense is always important for your examination. Now another article authored by Mr. Shashi Tharoor. He's a fourth term member of parliament from Lok Sabha. चौथी बार member of parliament elect हुए थिरुवनंतपुरम से. Now the new digital slavery needs constitutional guardrails. Now, what is the context of this particular article? So, if you read the first paragraph, you will not get the context of the article. So, we'll read the second passage of this article. However, a fundamental problem remains. So, digital slavery, we will directly discuss the impact of artificial intelligence. However, a fundamental problem remains. AI and morality do not observe the same time. So, we know this, that AI, artificial intelligence, and morality, they do not fit in the same shoes, because they are two different things, right? That's why the ethical use of artificial intelligence is very important. This is the established principle कि ethical use होना चाहिए artificial intelligence का, but ऐसा actually में बहुत कम होता है, right? However, a fundamental problem remains: AI and morality do not observe the same time. AI is developed at the breakneck speed of the startup culture, driven by an ethos to move fast and run perpetual beta test on society in the guise of progress. The velocity is fueled not just by commercial rivalries, but by relentless mathematical innovation spanning from Silicon Valley to Shenzhen. It represents a deeper hurdle for lawmakers worldwide. Parliament can govern what a person does, but it can never forbid a mathematical theorem, a discovery, or an equation from being made. How do lawmakers fulfill the Pope's wishes, right? So, the main problem highlighted by Mr. Shashi Tharoor is that you can take certain preventive measures when a specific wrongdoing is committed by a human being. You can actually take a lot of steps against that particular individual. But what will happen, or what happens when these wrongdoings are done by some machinery, राइट? कि उसको तो हम एक्सीडेंट बोल देते हैं ना, कि अगर मान लीजिए कि somebody committed murder, so he'll be prosecuted under the relevant sections of भारतीय न्याय संहिता. बट अगर कोई एक इंसान मशीन ऑपरेट कर रहा था और उस मशीन के मैल फंक्शन कर जाने की वजह से क्या, उस इंसान की जान चली गई, तो नाउ you cannot actually fix the accountability. So Mr. Tharoor is trying to point out that what will happen if some kind of wrongdoing is committed by the artificial intelligence, and there is no specific law, whether it's there is no international law to govern this particular thing, because you cannot govern it, right? And this entire idea of artificial intelligence is in very nascent stage, it's in very early stage, right? अभी हम बहुत सारे sectors में इसको implement होते हुए देखेंगे, right? Enforce होते हुए देखेंगे. So the idea that we should understand is that this is the entire concept of artificial intelligence is at very nascent stage, and it is growing at such a rapid pace that it becomes quite difficult for the law making authorities to have a proper policy. क्योंकि law हम जब कभी बनाते हैं ना, तो वो एक specific set of criterias को लेकर के बनाते हैं कि अगर मर्डर है तो मर्डर का डेफिनेशन ये होगा, अगर ये सारे एलिमेंट्स फुलफिल होंगे तो वो मर्डर होगा. बट एआई इतनी तेजी से इवॉल्व कर रहा है कि उसमें आप कोई फिक्स लॉ नहीं बना सकते, बिकॉज इट इज चेंजिंग एट वेरी रैपिड पेस. There is no international law, neither international law nor any sort of local law to govern artificial intelligence at this point of time. Law in most democracies moves slowly. By the time landmark legislation such as European Union Artificial Intelligence Act or the UK's Online Safety Act were painstakingly debated and passed, the specific technical harms they were built to combat had already mutated. So this is the main problem which I was trying to tell you, that you will make a law for a specific situation, but that situation will change because of the technological advancement. So your law will become null and void for that specific situation. It's not applicable on that particular situation, क्योंकि आपने जिस basic problem के लिए वो law बनाया था, वो अब क्या हो चुकी है, evolve हो चुकी है because of the technological revolution, right? और इतना तेजी से fast pace पे grow कर रहा है that you cannot have a very static law on that particular regard. Now, if legislation is fated to lag behind innovation, the consequences for if legislation is fated to lag behind innovation, the consequences for democratic societies are not merely regulatory, they are existential. Democracy cannot function if citizens cannot distinguish reality from fabrication. At its core, democratic governance relies on a shared epistemic foundation, a collective agreement on basic fact from which public debate, policy, and electoral choices can flow. When that foundation is systematically undermined, the entire democratic project is threatened. Today, AI-generated disinformation and advanced synthetic media deepfakes have advanced to a level of fidelity where the human eye and ear can no longer reliably detect forgery. This is already our reality. Highly convincing audio and video duplications of political leaders are deployed strategically during sensitive electoral cycles to depress voter turnout, fabricate scandals out of thin air, and instantly shatter public trust in the legitimate state institution. So this is something which we have to understand, that how artificial intelligence is misused by different stakeholders to change or to shape the public opinion, right? And at the end of the day, these audio and visual representations sometimes they change how a particular individual thinks, right? And although it's fake, but there are many citizens in our country जो उस artificial intelligence उस deep fake वीडियो से या visual representation से वो अपना जो opinion होता है they change their opinion because they do not fact check that particular video or content, right? So that is one main aspect, and these audio and visual representations are so realistic that you cannot actually distinguish कि अभी आपके पास में फोन आएगा अमिताभ बच्चन की आवाज में सामने से कोई बोल रहा है कि आप 7 करोड़ रुपए जीत गए, कौन बनेगा करोड़पति में, यू आर द लकी विनर. So you make this call to so many individuals और कुछ कन्विंस हो जाते हैं, फिर वो 1-2 लाख रुपए ट्रांसफर कर देते हैं, राइट? सो these kind of events will make it difficult for authorities to have a static law on this particular point. इसी चीज को लेकर के पूरा का पूरा आर्टिकल है और अभी हमें इससे ज्यादा शायद इसमें डिस्कशन नहीं करना चाहिए. नाउ वी नो दिस. While Mr. Keir Starmer was leaving office as the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, he resigned. He announced his resignation from the 10 Downing Street, which is the residential place for the Prime Minister of United Kingdom. And before resigning from his office, he did something very important for India. And that particular, achievement was that India and United Kingdom have decided that they will implement India-UK Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement from 15th of July 2026. Now, last year we signed this particular agreement with United Kingdom. Now we have implemented it, right? And it will be implemented from 15th of July. Now, so we know this India is one of the largest economies in the world. Right at this moment, it is at the 6th place, but वो बीच में अभी 4th place पे भी हम आ गए थे, right? So India is set to become the 3rd largest economy by the end of 2030, and United Kingdom is going to play a very important role in in the entire process. India becoming the 3rd largest economy because we do a lot of trade with United Kingdom, right? So our bilateral trade for financial year 2025-26 was 48 billion pounds. Now, once this particular free trade agreement is implemented, all these goods and services or all these trades will become even cheaper, they will become quick, so the bilateral trade will eventually increase, right? So this is one important aspect of this comprehensive economic trade agreement. Remember this, the nomenclature of the free trade agreement that we signed with United Kingdom, it is termed as comprehensive economic and trade agreement, right? Now moving on to the next point. A story of scale and depth. From day one, both sides agreed that this deal must be broad, deep, and driving force that brings long-term growth for both countries. Nearly 3 years of intensive negotiations preceded this deal, and there is no doubt that the agreement reached is the most economically significant trade deal that the UK has done since leaving the European Union. So now why I'm saying this? So we know this that on 31st of January 2020, Great Britain or United Kingdom finally left European Union, and after leaving European Union, their financial situation is not that rosy, right? It is quite dicey. बहुत slow economic growth है और उसका एक reason भी आप दे सकते हैं that last 6 years they do not have a stable government. 4 prime ministers have resigned since 2020 after Brexit, right? So this particular trade deal is important for India, but this trade deal is equally important for the United Kingdom as well, and it is their one of the most important achievements since they have left European Union. So now we have a free trade agreement with European Union as well, and we have a free trade agreement with United Kingdom as well, right? Now moving on to the next point. To give readers just a flavor of the far-reaching benefits, 99% of UK tariff lines will be duty-free for Indian products, and India will remove or reduce tariffs on 99% of its tariff lines for UK products. For India, this could support jobs in labor-intensive sectors such as textile, leather, jewelry, and equally it will boost export in service such as IT and finance by a large margin. So basically now moving on to the next point that we should understand. So India में basically जो manufacturing sector है, it will witness a great push. जो हमारी small or medium enterprises and small and medium enterprises, they will also get a huge benefit because of the free trade agreement. The entire market of United Kingdom would be open for the Indian commodities. So, and it will also provide quick access to the market of United Kingdom. Now, with the change in time, the demand of Indian goods is increasing day by day in the international market. There are two primary reasons कि क्यों इंडियन डायस्पोरा जो है वो भी बहुत तेजी से एक्सपैंड कर रहा है. तो जो इंडियन डायस्पोरा ओरिजिनली रह रहा है वो भी इंडियन गुड्स की डिमांड करते हैं एंड इवेंचुअली इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स आर गुड, सो उनकी डिमांड भी यूनाइटेड किंगडम में क्या होगी. सो स्मॉल और मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस जो इनमें इनको अगर पुश मिलेगा तो इसका इवेंचुअली बेनिफिट क्या होगा, जॉब ग्रोथ होगा हमारे कंट्री में, राइट. So these are the various impacts of this comprehensive economic trade agreement that we will witness in the upcoming times, right. Now, this is a very important question, and this particular important question brings us to the point where we have to discuss a very important document that is known as United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. Now, students, when we talk about why we are discussing this particular article, again, a very important question: why? Why we are discussing this particular title? Can neutral ships be lawfully attacked? Because in the recent times, we have seen that a lot of things are taking place in Persian Gulf. पर्शियन गल्फ में बहुत सारी शिप्स पे अटैक हो रहा है. रिसेंटली क्या हुआ दैट यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका अटैक्ड 3 ships in the Persian Gulf, and these ships were basically neutral, right? So the question that we have to discuss: when there is a war going on between the two countries, it is absolutely fine that ships from the countries which are involved in the conflict might come under some sort of attack. But ships which are involved in the commercial shipping, can those neutral ships be lawfully attacked? जो पार्टी टू द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ही नहीं है, जो पार्टी टू द वॉर नहीं है, क्या उन कंट्रीज की जो फ्लैग्ड शिप्स है क्या उन पर अटैक लॉफुली किया जा सकता है? दैट इज द क्वेश्चन दैट वी हैव टू डिस्कस. And to answer this particular question, we have to read a few very important provisions of United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, UN clause, right? So, and we know this 3 ships which were attacked were Marivex, Setabelo, and Jalvid. Setabelo pe attack hua tha, so 3 individuals also lost their lives, right? So now moving on. The two primary bodies of law governing naval operations during an international armed conflict are the law of the naval warfare, a branch of law of armed conflict or international humanitarian law, and the law of the sea. So the former regulates the conduct of hostilities at sea, including which vessels may be attacked and when merchant ships may be visited and searched, captured, destroyed after capture or attacked, as well as the declaration and enforcement of naval blockades. So basically, this law of naval warfare, it is a branch of international humanitarian law. ये बेसिकली ये एक्सप्लेन करता है कि जब वॉर चल रहा होगा दो कंट्रीज के बीच में तो क्या क्या सिचुएशंस ऐसे होते हैं जब आप किसी न्यूट्रल शिप का सर्च एंड सीजर कर सकते हैं, आप किसी शिप का सर्च एंड सीजर कर सकते हैं, कब आप उस शिप को कैप्चर कर सकते हैं और कब आप किन कंडीशंस में आप उस शिप को कैप्चर करके उसको डिस्ट्रॉय कर सकते हैं. ऑल्सो यू कैन इम्पोज अ नेवल ब्लॉकेड बिकॉज नेवल ब्लॉकेड वॉज इम्पोज बाय द American government in Persian Gulf during this particular conflict, right? So कब कब आप ये कर सकते हैं? Now moving on to the next point, the law of the sea set out primarily in the UN clause often called the Constitution of the Ocean. So we know this. United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea is the most important document when we talk about international water or laws related to seas. Defines maritime zones such as territorial sea up to 12 nautical miles. Now this number is actually important, that up to 12 nautical miles it is territorial sea, up to 200 nautical miles it is exclusive economic zone. The high seas and the international straits, although the US, Israel, Iran, and some neutral states are not parties to UN clause, its relevant provisions are widely regarded as customary international law binding on all states. The law of the naval warfare does not confer unrestricted authority upon belligerents. Its operations is constrained by international humanitarian laws, neutrality law, and the law of the sea. While ethical restraints on warfare have roots in ancient Greek, Roman, Indian, and Chinese civilizations, their modern legal expression lies in international humanitarian laws, codified in the Geneva Convention of 1949 and supplemented by other treaties. So basically, and now what is the objective of this international humanitarian laws? So basic objective of this international humanitarian laws is basically to protect wounded, sick, prisoners of war, civilians, and civilian objects while restraining certain weapons and methods of combat. अब international humanitarian laws का मतलब क्या होता है कि भाई आप जो क्लस्टर म्यूनिशंस होते हैं, अभी आप लोगों ने देखा होगा कि जब ईरान और इसराइल का कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल रहा था तो क्लस्टर म्यूनिशंस का यूज हो रहा था, राइट? सो दीज क्लस्टर म्यूनिशंस आर प्रोहिबिटेड अंडर द इंटरनेशनल ह्यूमैनिटेरियन लॉ. Use of these weapons which are biochemical weapons, this is also prohibited in under international law. आप use नहीं कर सकते biochemical weapons का, right? Then international humanitarian laws also laid down certain provisions like कि जब war time चल रहा होगा या जब कोई armed conflict चल रहा होगा, so उस particular armed conflict के time पर आप कौन कौन से ऐसे places होते हैं जिन पर attack नहीं कर सकते. Remember this particular point that when this particular conflict started in West Asia, क्या हुआ था कि एक ईरान के एक स्कूल पर अटैक हुआ था ना, जिसमें अप्रोक्सीमेटली 170 स्टूडेंट्स लॉस्ट देयर लाइव्स. तो बेसिकली जो सिविलियन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर होता है, एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस होते हैं, हॉस्पिटल्स होते हैं, इस पर आप वॉर टाइम पर भी अटैक नहीं कर सकते. दिस इज इंटरनेशनल लॉ एंड इफ यू आर डूइंग सो दिस इज वायलेशन ऑफ इंटरनेशनल लॉ, राइट? नाउ moving on to the next point. So the next important or relevant point which has been discussed here, uh, law of neutrality. Now what is law of neutrality? So the next point is law of neutrality. जो उस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में इन्वॉल्व ही नहीं है, राम और श्याम के बीच में लड़ाई है तो उसमें मोहन का क्यों नुकसान होना, which regulates relationship between belligerent and neutral states by protecting neutral territory, shipping and commerce from unnecessary interference while requiring neutrals not to provide military assistance to either side. In the Strait of Hormuz, which straddles the territorial seas of Iran and Oman and carries roughly 1/5 of global oil supplies, neutral merchant vessels therefore remain entitled to exercise transit passage despite the hostilities. So basically, it has been clearly said under the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea that any neutral ship has the right of passage if they are not providing any kind of assistance to the parties involved in the conflict. It is given in under the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, right? So remember this, that neutral parties cannot be attacked at any point of time, whether there's an armed conflict going on, till that particular point when they are not providing any kind of assistance to these parties involved in the कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, राइट? तब तक हम उन पर अटैक नहीं कर सकते. अब इसमें आर्टिकल 2 क्लॉज 4 डिस्कस किया गया, आर्टिकल 2 क्लॉज 4 ऑफ द यूएन चार्टर, एंड वी हैव डिस्कस्ड इट मल्टीपल टाइम दैट व्हाट इज आर्टिकल 2 क्लॉज 4 ऑफ द यूएन चार्टर. आर्टिकल 2 क्लॉज 4 ऑफ द यूएन चार्टर is basically it talks about that no member state shall use the force or threaten to use the force against any other member state when uh, against another member state without taking the prior approval of the United Nations Security Council. You cannot attack or threaten to attack any other country. The second important point that we have to understand at this point of time is, students, that there is also Article 51, and Article 51 of the UN Charter talks about the notion of राइट टू डिफेंस. तो अभी हम लोगों ने एक आर्टिकल और टेक्स्ट एंड कॉन्टेक्स्ट में डिस्कस किया था ना कि क्या जब कोई शिप इंटरनेशनल वाटर्स में अगर उस पर अटैक होता है तो कैन द रिसीविंग नेशन रिटेलिएट और कैन इट give a proper response to that particular attack, right? Then the founder and no, not the founder, the leader of Awami League, Sheikh Hasina, is in India since 5th of August 2024 after the uh, his government was overpowered by a protest led by the Gen Zs. So finally she is in India since 5th of August 2024. Now she has given a statement that in 2026 she will travel to Bangladesh. She will go back to her own country and she's not afraid of the consequences, and she has seen a lot and she's ready to witness any kind of uh, development or the punishment which can be inflicted upon her. Now we have discussed it that it was Tariq Rahman's first foreign visit since he became the prime minister of Bangladesh, and his first international visit was to China. And while visiting China, there was an intense discussion about Tista water project. Now Tista water project is actually a bad news for India because again, um, we don't because we don't want our neighboring countries to have very good relations with China, because China is the main competition for India. It is also very relevant for the security purposes. So now we have 96th and 97th chess grand masters from India. Mr. Ethan Vaz has became the 96th grand master, and GB Harshvardhan became the 97th grand master of India. तो दिस इज समथिंग इंपॉर्टेंट. 96 टोटल 97 ग्रैंड मास्टर हो चुके हैं. पहले ग्रैंड मास्टर कौन थे? विश्वनाथन आनंद. 96 इज इथान वास एंड 97th इज जीबी हर्षवर्धन. Right, so this is again a very important development that has taken place in the world of chess. Right, so students, this is all about today's analysis. We did it in approximately 55 minutes. So yeah, we will see you tomorrow at 7:45 in the morning. Till then, just take a good care of yourself, and please keep on dropping your feedback in the comment section. And that's it from my side. Thank you so much. Thank you.